I'm going to make another video for today's presentation, and I will upload a link once I have this posted to YouTube. So let's just get started. As always, you really do need to understand the environment that you're working in. It's the same old, same old. You're going to deploy something to MrRobot. It's going to be a remote shell, but you're not actually going to upload it. It's going to be a little different today, and you'll understand that in a bit. But again, it's going to have an IP address that you need to configure back to your Kali. You're going to need to launch a listener on your Kali, and then you're going to need to load this remote exploit that you've pushed onto the MrRobot server. So as always, you really do need to understand your environment. Let us, as always, start by importing the OVA. Oh my, I'm not sharing my screen. Let me share the screen. Thank you very much. So let me share my screen. I am talking, and I'm guessing you guys can hear that, but you also need to be able to see my screen, and I'm sorry about that. Thank you, whoever that was that let me know. Thank you very much about that. Okay, so as I said, first thing we want to do is understand our environment. As always, we're going to run MrRobot on our host-only network, but we're going to deploy something that was very much like what we did with the BT risk, in that we're going to deploy, we're not actually going to upload a file, but we're going to deploy that very same file in the very same manner to the MrRobot environment without actually uploading it. We're going to have to configure it as to talk back to our Kali environment, which means before we invoke this remote shell, we have to have our listener running nkali across our host-only network. Now that we understand that, we can go ahead and import the appliance. Go to File, Import, and go to where you download your information security OVA files, and import it as normal. If you are lucky enough to do this on a solid state drive, it should be pretty quick. As always, once it's in, we want to verify the settings. The name VM isn't very good. If you want, you can change that to MrRobot, just so it's a little easier for you to understand in your set. But the system should be fine. The display is irrelevant. Storage is irrelevant. The network, of course, does matter, in that when it comes in as a bridged adapter. Okay, it's still complaining about the video. We don't have to worry about that. But when we bring this in, it very much has the wrong adapter or the wrong network attachment. So I've been saying this time and time again, and this time I'm actually forcing you to do it. You have to specify host only. You have to specify the correct host-only network if you have more than one. And you must specify the correct promiscuous mode, which is allow all. Even though we're unlikely to hit this VM from our host environment, I like setting the promiscuous mode on our host-only network of our target machines to allow all, in case I want to hit it from my host-only and from my host environment as well. Audio shouldn't matter. Display, if you really want to clear that message, you can change it to VMS-VGA, but it really doesn't matter. It operates as a command line only virtual machine. Once you have that set, start your VM. Keep an eye on it as it's booting up in case it throws any errors. You can hit enter on that boot screen. If you haven't done so, also fire up your Kali. That is taking an awful long time to boot up. There we go. That's better. Doesn't look like it's going to give us any clues. No. You see, we don't get any scrolling clues as this thing boots up. So we don't get anything watching it boot up. Okay, well that's fine. We get the cool ASCII art that we've seen time and time again in the hacking world, but that's fine. As always, because we don't see anything and we don't know what our IP address might be, we're going to fire up a terminal and do an nmap scan. I'm going to scan my network and see if I can discover the machine. Knowing that my IP address is 196, anything other than that should be my target machine. So there I am. So I see this one at 211 that is running web and HTTPS services as well as SSH, which looks like it might be closed. So it might be available but not receiving connections. So I can't even attack that. Pretty cool. So I'm really going to need to focus on web attacks. No problem. We know what to do. As always, we're going to, well, before we do that, let's do the standard nmap-sv-uppercase O and target that IP address 56. For me, 211. Yeah, thank you. And I also forgot the sudo as well, because it's doing a service scan, but thank you. I'm going to have to do sudo as well. I don't think I'm going to get anything extra. It never hurts to do a detailed scan. You can also, of course, as the notes say, do the -A if you want. You can do a full port scan. But again, I try and keep these things streamlined as much as possible. And while we're waiting for our nmap to return the results, I also want to mention one more thing. The document for today's class is 15 pages long, but please note that the last third of that is just a running log from my terminal on everything that I did. There's a lot of juggling of balls on this one. There's a lot of balancing a whole bunch of things at different points. So I basically I did a log dump of my activities for this attack, and that's the final 5 pages of today's lesson. So don't allow the fact that it's 15 pages to daunt you. We should still be done again in under an hour. Alrighty. So again, we did the more detailed. Again, not a lot of extra information here. So we're going to go into our, open up a couple of new tabs and do one for derb, http:// and that is going to be 192.168.56.211. And on the other one, we're going to nicto. And see what we get. So we see something that says admin. That looks appealing. We see something called blog. That looks appealing. I remember this now. There's a lot of hurry up and wait on this one. Nicto and derb are pretty thorough. There's other ones as well, like SQL map is pretty powerful for doing a lot of these resource checks as well. I don't want to say yes or no. You know, SQL map is for for SQL services, but it's also good for mapping out web services as well. It's surprisingly good for that. It's quite surprising how good it is. Some of these tools, however, are a little too easy. So when it comes to enumeration, I have this, again, I don't know why I keep using this analogy today, but I have this juggling that I have to do where I don't want to give you too much, which sounds like it's a sucky thing, but if I make it too easy, and I don't know about the nmap one, maybe that's a good one to look into that, but I don't want to give too much. There's another one I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't want to give too much because it's too easy. Okay, thank you. Okay. Anyway, as we go through this, if you take a look at page 2 of the handout, I'm not going to sit here and wait for these things to run. One of the things that gets returned, and maybe it's already come back here, is a file called robots.txt. Robots.txt is what I have bolded at the top third of page 2 of the handout. /robots.txt. Let's see if either one of these return that. There it is right here. Okay. There's a file called robots.txt. For those of you who don't know, robots.txt is a file that's used for websites and web admins to tell search engines what not to focus on. There's certain things that they don't want to show up in a search engine. They often get listed in the robots.txt. It's not the only thing that you can use for it, but it's kind of like commented or hidden fields inside of a web page. It's like, why are you commenting these things? Why are you hiding these form elements from me? Why are you hiding stuff with the robots.txt file? Anytime you see a robots.txt file, it's one of the things you should probably take a look at pretty early on. Also, when we're going through this, I'm going to let that go. I'm going to let these things continue to run, but one of the first things I want to do is take a look at that robots.txt. Now that I've seen it, I have no problems of moving forward in my attack. But here's some more stuff. We've got WordPress load, WordPress login, WordPress mail. There's a bunch of WordPress stuff as well. And WordPress has a long history of being notoriously weak. So we're going to focus on the WordPress stuff, and we're going to initially, though, take a look at that robots.txt. But before we do anything, let's take a look at this web page. If you go to the IP address of your machine, this is a really nice, like somebody put a lot of work into this. This is just a script running. Somebody took and put a lot of effort into this. And you can actually be interactive with it as well. Prepare, and then you get some videos, and then you can play the video, and then, there's just all this really, really cool stuff. Like somebody did a lot of work on this. I encourage you later on to go through and just play with the web interface that they created. But we have work to do, so let's look at robots.txt. Okay? And right away we start seeing some interesting things. First off, this was part of a challenge, if you will, where you're supposed to find different artifacts. One of them is keys. So you're trying to find these cool things, and if you take a look at this file, keys1of3.txt, you should find a hash, and then you can enter that hash into the game management system. And if you're first, you'll get extra points. If you're second, what have you. So there is a bunch of these things, but we're just focused on the boot to root. Another thing is this F-Society dictionary file. So let's take a look at that next. And when we take a look at fsociety.dictionary, it says, hey, this looks like a 7 meg file. What do you want to do with it? Well, if this is a 7 meg file that has the extension of dictionary, I want to save this file. Okay? So I'm going to download LOZ. Save file. Okay, I don't know if that, and I'm going to open up a new tab and see if it downloaded for me. Oh, there it is right there. All right. So it did. ls-al, and there it is there. And if you want to know how big it is, you can type in du-h star. And by using the -h, you'll say, give me the results of usage in human terms. The du command is disk usage. You can specify arguments. I'm saying, give me the amount of everything in this directory in human terms. And it's telling me that this file is actually 7 meg in size. Let's take a look at it. Head, I'm not going to dump the whole thing, but let's take a look at the first 10 lines. Interesting. Head-50, F-Society. So it looks like it's an actual dictionary file. There's a lot of stuff in there, though. Maybe we should try cleaning it up first. And again, this part of the attack, you don't have to. This part of the attack, you can just use the file as is unmodified, but it's kind of like the rocku.txt file in that it's big, and if you just let it go through, it'll be a long time to use. And I have some commands on, what page is it? I just need to check. If you take a look at the top of page 3 of the handout, you can actually do a word count on this. And you can count the number of lines. It won't have much difference, but you can count the number of lines in this file. And it'll tell you how many lines there are. There are 858,000 files, or lines, which means there are 858,000 words in this dictionary before we start using it. Let's try cleaning that up. And I've actually got a command where you cat fsociety dictionary to the sort command. And we're also grabbing unique -u. Can't remember what the -u is. And then the unique command, and then redirect. We pipe that to the unique command, and then we redirect it to another. Make sure I type it the same as in the support thing. Sort -u. I think. Can't remember what the U switch is. Anyway, or maybe it's lowercase or something like that. Anyway, I can't remember exactly what the -u is, but we're taking the society, we're sorting it, and then we're grabbing unique values. And when we do that, we get a much smaller file. And if we do our line count now, we've gone from 858,000 down to 11,000 results. Do you have to do this? No. Should it be faster? I don't know. It might have been slower the old way. But cleaning up this file is kind of handy. And this is what I love about this activity, is that you're actually using a dictionary. So much of hacking these days requires this kind of intel gathering ahead of time. You have to find usernames, you have to scrape places for different email addresses so you can get a list of usernames so you can pass that information as part of your attack. And we're going to see that next. You also want to scroll around and get as much information as you can about different users so you can steal or potentially find parts of passwords. And then you're going to use those to create dictionaries as well. And that's what we're going to focus on today. We've created a new dictionary file. We found some stuff. We've now created a dictionary file. Let's see if we can't do something with that. All right. We've finished our web scans. We've got WordPress, WordPress, WordPress stuff. And we're still running here. We're going to let that run. But we see some admin stuff and we see some WordPress admin stuff as well. Okay. At the end of the day, it looks like we've got a WordPress site. It looks like this really cool site that we had running before is actually a WordPress site. Let's see if we can't take advantage of that. I'm going to open up a new tab, but strictly speaking, I don't need to. I could just keep reusing the other one, and I'm just going to try and go to one of the login pages. Let's try wp-login.php. And it takes me to a WordPress login page. Now, WordPress by itself is not a bad product. I know a lot of people who use it and they get some great results from it. The problem with WordPress is that it's very, very, very easy to deploy. And for the longest time, it was the Microsoft of content management systems, whereas it was more focused on features and ease of use than it was on security. And there were a lot of people that took advantage of that, and there were a lot of sites that got compromised, because if you start going through the stack of tools that are available to you in Kali and look at the sheer numbers of tools that take advantage of WordPress, it's staggering. So many vulnerabilities related to WordPress were so easily exploited that they've gotten better, but if you see a WordPress site, you want to start attacking it right away. So let's try the basics. Anytime you set up a basic site, they usually try admin, and then they try tick, or 1 is equal to 1, and then let's try a hash and see if that works. Invalid username. Okay, this is a problem. What do you mean? What do you mean invalid username? WP underscore admin. Password field is empty, so let's give it some gibberish. Invalid username. When we start defining a more hardened login for our blog software, I never want to see this kind of granularity in your errors. Don't tell me I've got an invalid username, because that tells me I can iterate through a bunch of usernames, maybe from a dictionary, try and figure out a valid username or a collection of valid usernames, and then try iterating through those usernames with passwords. Okay? This kind of detailed granularity in saying you've got the wrong username. Before you do anything else, you got the wrong username. I don't want to see that in any of your websites. Okay? It is giving too much information to hackers. Hackers are looking for clues. Now I can iterate through a list, try and find a username, and take advantage of it from that point. Did somebody have a question? Okay. If you have a question, don't hesitate to jump in. All right. So, knowing this, knowing that it's going to tell me that I have an invalid username, I can actually take advantage of that, and we can try another hacking tool. I'm going to open up yet another tab. I'm going to zoom in. And just like before, we're going to use a network password cracking utility. Last time we did Medusa because we were trying to attack SSH, and Medusa is really good for SSH attacks. We could try using Medusa for a web form attack, but I've found Hydra works better. There's a number of them. There's Medusa, there's Hydra. I think you can get Hashcat to do a network attack. Like, there's a bunch of these different tools that will do, you know, some of them will do local attacks and network attacks. There are some that are focused on network attacks. Medusa and Hydra are examples of those. Of the two, Hydra, I think, is the better one when you're going to do a pure web-faced attack. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to start attacking this WordPress login page using Hydra. Before we can do that, we have to take a look at the source and get an understanding of what some of these artifacts are called. All right. There's a, looks like there's a user login, it's called log, and then there's a password field called PWD. Okay, so we're going to need to keep those in mind in our attack going forward. Okay, one is called log, that's the login ID. The other one's called PWD, that's the password ID. Okay, so these artifacts we need to understand. We also need to understand what gets called. It calls WP login. Even though it is WP login, it calls itself, so we have to remember that. So we're calling WP login with log and PWD, and then WP submit for the submit button. All right. There's some hidden values. Those are out of scope. We're not going to worry about it. So login, password, and submit buttons. Log, PWD, and WP submit. And once you do that, you can combine those together. First off, I made a mistake. All right. I've got these two files in my downloads directory. That's wrong. I should have MrRobot. I should have made a MrRobot directory. So that's the first thing. Make the correct directory. Go into your downloads or whatever you have and move those two dictionary files into the correct folder. Perfect. I should have those in the MrRobot folder. You need to create your own workflow. If you're in the downloads and you're happy working in the downloads, that's fine, but I'd rather you have a proper workflow with directories. Okay? So now I've got that, I can try and launch my Hydra command. And I have the Hydra, where is it? Page 4 at the top, including an explanation of the different arguments that go with it. So it's Hydra dash uppercase L for the login. Okay, Hydra, like Medusa, has uppercase for files, lowercase for single values. I want to specify an entire file for the user IDs. Okay, I'm going to use a lowercase, and I'm not focused on the password yet. I just want to try and figure out usernames so I can try that to crack passwords. So the first thing I want to do is iterate through my dictionary, my new F-Society dictionary file. I want to iterate through that and see if any of the values in there are acceptable for a user ID for this login page, because I know when I don't have the valid email. So I can use the Hydra command to that. So the first thing is new F-Society dictionary file. I need to specify a password, but I don't care what it is. You can type in whatever. You can even type in something silly like Charlie Brown's kite eating tree. When I was in high school math, my high school computer teacher, and we had computers back then. I mean, they ran on gerbils, but we had computers back then. That was her favorite variable name, Mrs. Boisvert. She's an awesome teacher. And anytime I have a variable name that I need to be silly, I use Mrs. Boisvert's Charlie Brown's kite eating tree. Anyway, enough of that. So I need to attack a server, 192.168.56.211. Yep. And then I need to tell it what to do. And I want it to do, post. I forgot to mention that. One of the items I forgot to mention in my explanation is that it uses a method equals post. And because it's method equals post, we want to tell it to use the HTTP-post form. So I'm saying there is a form. It uses method equals post. So on this other side, you need to format these strings in the expected string post or whatever it is, right? Because it needs to know that. And for that, there are 1, 2, 3, I think there's 4 arguments, 4 or 5 arguments. There's a bunch of arguments that go with it, and that's what I have next. The first argument that goes with it is the action, and we already know what that is, wp-login.php. All right, we separate that with the form data. And that is log, which is the username, is equal to, and then this is just syntax with Hydra, and that is uppercase user. And it gets that with the carets from up here. The login, so each time it iterates through a user, it'll substitute that value into the log value for this form. And then ampersand pass, or PWD, which is the next argument in our form, is equal to caret pass, which is again grabbing the values from up here. I may be able to hard code that, but it expects this, so that's what I'm giving it. It's just going to use whatever that variable is every time. And then ampersand, the next thing it wants is the submit, wp-submit is equal to, and we see that text right here. Where is it? Login. That's the value. So we need that wp submit is equal to log plus in. So just like we would with other things, we substitute the spaces for the plus symbol. Okay? And then the third argument, or the sixth argument, depending on how you look at it, is what are we looking for? Failures are equal to invalid username, lowercase. And where do we get that? And we need to close the tick for the opening. And where do we get that? We see that right here. If it says invalid username, then it is a failure. So I don't want to see the failures, I want to see the successes. Okay? So when we do that and we hit enter, it'll start iterating through that dictionary and try and give us some remarks. You can actually use the -v if you want. I think the -v will give you a little bit more info, but we don't have to worry about that. But it takes a while. Okay? If you've typed it in, if you turn to page 4 of the handout, you will start seeing some results. And we're not going to wait. Again, these are screen captures from my attack, and it says, Elliot appears to be one of the acceptable ones. Okay? Perfect. After a while, it is going to give us a username of Elliot. And it finds 3 different ones. Uppercase Elliot, uppercase E for Elliot, and then all lowercase Elliot. Now, if you're Elliot, are you going to log in with, case sensitivity, or are you just going to type in everything lowercase? For me, I'm going to type in everything lowercase and then tick or 1 is equal to 1 and then the hash symbol. And then right away, the password you entered for Elliot is incorrect. Again, I do not want to see that kind of information. Now it's telling me that Elliot is a valid username. So now what I got to do is try and crack the password for Elliot. Are there any questions? Again, how did I do this? Created a dictionary file. I don't care how you create a dictionary file, but I created a dictionary file by something I found on the website. I saw some bad design here that allows me to get error messages when people don't enter the username correctly. I used that to try and find a username. You'll see that in a second. That username is Elliot. Now that I have a username, I'm going to try and find a password. So I'm going to again open up a new tab, zoom in, and I'm going to try the Hydra command again, except this time I've got a valid username. So I'm not going to use the exact same Hydra command, but a lot of it is going to be reusable. So I'm going to highlight the command, or you can just type it in again. Go over and paste the clipboard without actually having the enter character. All right. I'm going to use my password. All right. Sorry, I'm not going to use my dictionary file for my username. I'm going to use lower L because I know who my user is, and it is Elliot. All right. So I don't use a file, which is the uppercase L. I use a single entry, which is the lowercase. But the password is again going to be my dictionary that I found before. Any new F. Of course, be in the correct directory. So I'm going to specify the password as new fsociety.dictionary. The IP address is again correct. The HTTP post form is again correct. The WP login is again correct. The login is user, the password is pass, the WP submit should be correct. This time it's not invalid username. This time a failure is, we can see it right here. And we can take any of this string, but I'm just going to focus on the is incorrect. Just like that, because that's part of this new error message. The password you entered for username Elliot is incorrect, so that's a failure. I'm going to use that. Let's try that. If I haven't got any typos, it should go through and it should start a new scan. If you go back to your first one, right away, this is an indication that the attack is working. Now you can leave that running, all right? You can probably leave that running, and you can come back here and keep an eye on that as well. But here is the proof that the command that I typed in, I didn't have any typos, hallelujah, all right? It found Elliot, Elliot, and all lowercase Elliot. Now I just went with all lowercase Elliot because most people don't do case sensitivity when they're typing in their username. Now that I know that's correct, I can take that over. I will see that Elliot is correct, but I've got a different message here. So I can try again, using my dictionary, I can try cracking the password. Again, using Hydra, this time specifying a username, but a dictionary for the password. If I found, interesting, if I found other users here, I would have other tabs going with the user IDs, just like we did with Medusa. Any questions on that? Okay. After a while, you are going to get the password. Again, I'm not going to have you watch for another 7 or 8 minutes. The password is at the top of page, is that 6 of the handout? Yeah, that's the top of page 6 of the handout. Oh, excuse me. I apologize, excuse me. The in the password is a weird string. It's really weird, so it would have been hard for our dictionary files to use. The pre-canned dictionary files that we have in, for example, the RockU file would probably not have had this password. ER, uppercase E, uppercase R, 28-0652. Now, does anybody watch the MrRobot series? What the hell is that? What is that ER28-0652? What is that? Ah, thank you. Thank you very much. So his password is his employee number. That's something you might not have gotten in another dictionary. So, sorry, say again, Kiki? Yeah, it really is. You're not wrong. But, and a lot of these, and this is still a relatively introductory level attack, a lot of these introductory attacks have pretty basic things like that. So we're going to allow that. What's most important is that I'm logged in to the WP admin. I'm logged into the admin portal for the website, which is crazy, okay? If I tried uploading a file, it might let me. I could go to the media, add new media, but if you try this, you're going to find it struggles. You could try adding a new page, but then you have to add it to the menu and everything, and you're going to struggle with that. What you can try doing, however, where is it? Home? I'm going to make this bigger. I can't remember exactly where it was. I think it's under pages. What you can do is you can modify existing pages. Just can't remember where it is. I got to go check my notes again. Appearance. It's under appearance. Okay. When you go under appearance, there's a thing called themes. And when you select themes, you can actually edit your themes. It's done with the editor, I think. Under the editor, when you select editor down at the bottom, you have the ability of editing a whole bunch of themes. So I went to appearance and I selected the editor. And with the editor, I can also edit some of the other templates, including the 404 template. As you all know, the 404 error means that something wasn't found. So if I'm going to contaminate something on this website, I want to try and hide my actions as much as possible. I'm going to add it to a page that doesn't get loaded a lot. One of them that doesn't get loaded a lot is the 404 page, especially on websites that are like this, that are content management systems. The content tends to be driven by the menus, and the menus tend to be connected to content. So it tends not to throw 404 errors. So this is the perfect page that if I want to, I could actually populate with a reverse shell. Okay, and that's what I'm going to do. So again, how did I get here? I'm not going to click on the update file. So when I logged in, I was presented with the dashboard. I went to appearance, and then at the bottom, I went to the editor. When I was within the editor, I said, you know what? I don't want to edit the style. I want to edit the 404 template. I'm going to actually manipulate the contents of this 404.php file. And when I do that, I can go right down to the bottom and hit a couple of line breaks. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that template we saw before. And there we are. Because I let my attack run in the background, it discovered the password for the user ID Elliot. Perfect. So what I want to do now is I want to take a look, and I'm going to do this through the text editor. I'm going to File and Open, and just like we did before, I'm going to go to other locations. I hate that. We're actually going to the root, but that's okay. So again, how did I get here? File, Open, and stupid. Other locations, computer, but there it is. It says it right there, the /. So go to the root, and remember it was user, share, down to the W's, web shells, there it is there. Or you can just try typing it somewhere. It's really dumb. We want to go to the PHP, and we already used the PHP reverse shell.php. That one worked well for us. I think that's the one I recommend that you use again. Yeah, PHP reverse shell.php. So let's just take a look at that. We're going to open it up. Now, why did I open it up in this text editor? A couple of reasons. It allows me to copy and paste this into the browser. I can add this at the bottom of the footer. After the footer is over, I can add all of this text as part of the 404 template. Before I do that, I'm going to again change my IP address. That takes me back just like we did with the BT risk. 192.168.56.196. Yes, 196. So I've got that. I'm never going to save this. I don't need this. The port is 1234. Control A, Control C, or if you want to make sure, edit copy. Go in, and right after your footer, paste it. Sanity check time, scroll up, scroll up, scroll up. Make sure that it has what you think should be there. Most importantly, ensure that it has the right IP address and the correct port. Again, how did I do this? I found the file that I wanted to use. I opened it up in some text editor that would easily allow me to copy and paste. I opened it up this time in the text editor mousepad. Once I did that, I changed the IP address like we did before to my Kali, selected everything and copied it. I then went to the website that I was able to log into. It took me to the dashboard. I went to Appearance, and under Appearance, I went to the text editor because I want to deploy this file. One of the easier places to do that is the 404. As I mentioned before, these things tend not to throw 404 errors very often. It's something that's not going to get used a lot, so it's a great place to hide my behavior. I loaded the 404 template in the text editor. I went down to the very bottom, hit the carriage return a couple of times, and pasted my payload into the 404 template. Scroll up to make sure that my edits are in place. The IP is the correct IP. The port is the correct port. Now I can go down to the bottom of this page and click on Update File. File was successfully edited. You can actually go in to a different one, go back into the 404 template, and validate that your edits are in place. Perfect. Now that my edits are in place, as always, I need to start my listener. NC-NVLP, the port is 1234, and enter. And now that it's listening, I can force this to load. And I can just go to that IP address, 2211/whatever. Doesn't matter what I go to as long as I throw that 404 error. And when I do that, again, that page can't be found, but the page never completes loading. The page never completes loading, and I have a shell. Huzzah. Now I can try and escalate my privileges. Again, I'm going to do the Python shell. Execute the command import pty.spawn, open bracket, open tick, double tick, I guess. Yeah, bin bash, close double ticks, close bracket, close single tick. And I have a typo again. I do not know why I struggle so much with Python. THON. Kiki, you're supposed to catch my typo. No, the up arrow doesn't work because it's a crappy shell. Yeah, so that's okay. You're bad. It's not your fault that I'm a bad typer, but thank you for that. Thank you for the. Anyway, maybe. Anyway, this time I'm logged into something called daemon, not a web user, but that's fine. But I am not logged in as root. Now I can try doing the standard ps-eaf and grep root. See what services are running as root and see if any of these are exploitable. It looks like something is running as MySQL script. That might be worth looking at. There's another Apache thing that might be running as root. There's a bunch of things that are running as root, and I would definitely take a look at those to see if there's anything that I could exploit there. But again, as I'm trying to keep you focused on this, we're not going to try those because I don't think any of them are going to work. That's one way of elevating your privileges to root. And I may have mentioned this at the time. There's another way of doing this as well. The other way of doing this is to look for applications that temporarily have the set UID or the SUID bit set. Or it's not set UID, it's the SUID bit set for them. And what that looks like is, as I said before, this is a process that runs as root when it needs to do something. And the best example is the password command. If you want to change your password, you have to have read-write access to the shadow file. You do not have read-write access to the shadow file. So when you type in the password command, it runs as root just long enough to make that change, and then it stops running as root. For a program to look like that, it has to have a special permission, and we're going to see that now. Okay? We're going to do the find command off of the root, but we're going to look for a special permission, and that permission is having the 4000 bit set. And if we hit enter now, it's going to throw, and don't hit enter because it just does this. You get a whole bunch of permission denied stuff, which isn't any good, that doesn't help. So what I need to do is I need to okay. I screwed up my machine. I hope you didn't follow me. So I am going to have to. Yep. Yep. I throw a bunch of MySQL errors here. Yep. So if you see that, if you get a database connection, go back and check your VM, and you may need to restart your VM. Again, we're hacking. If you get a database error, restart your VM, your MrRobot VM. You don't need to restart Kali. Okay? Let that start back up. Because we've modified the 404 template, it shouldn't be an issue. We shouldn't have to remodify everything. The changes should be in place and still exploitable. So I have my listener running. I still have my listener running. Reload the page, and I get the 404 error perfect, page not found perfect. Restart my shell. Now Python -c import pty.spawn bracket double bin bash close tick perfect. And we're going to try that command again. Because you can get a whole bunch of permission denied, you don't want to see those. And there's a way of doing error trapping. And there's different error levels in the Unix shell. And level 2 is considered an error. So what you want to do is you want to redirect all errors to something else. You don't want to see them on the screen. And you do that by redirecting error 2s or error levels 2s to something that's called the bit bucket or dev null. So it looks something like this. First of all, our find command -perm -4000, and then we want to redirect all errors to dev null. Dev null is the bit bucket. It's where all the bad stuff or all the errors go to, so we don't see them on our screen. And when we do that, we'll get everything that is running that has this SUID bit set. All right. One of them is user local bin nmap. Is that the standard nmap? Well, let's type in which nmap and see. There doesn't seem to be an nmap. Nmap doesn't seem to be a command. So there's this special instance of user local bin nmap. Now I would try all of these. I would try all of these weird things and see if there's anything exploitable here. But having nmap run, if you try that, there is a way of shelling out of nmap. And that is with the nmap dash dash, I think. Wait a minute. Yeah, dash interactive, like that. USR local bin nmap dash interactive, like that. You're in interactive mode. Now, because I can execute as root, let's try bin shell, like this. Is that the first one I try? No, I did this. Execute sh, like that. Who am I? Perfect. Exit. Exclamation bash. Who am I? I'm still Damon. Okay? So, yeah, I should really read my notes. It's just like, yeah. Okay. I should really follow my notes, but I get excited with this one. So, what did I do? Let's do this again. After I did my search, which doesn't work here, I still don't have the up arrows. After I did my search for executables that had this SUID bit set, I found user local bin nmap. Okay, when I execute user local bin nmap, I can execute it in interactive mode. And because it's in interactive mode, I can tell it to execute a shell. When it does that, it shells me out, and I can say, who am I? That didn't work. But I can also exit out of that shell, go back into the interactive mode of nmap, and I can try a different shell. And right away, you can see the difference in the prompt. I have a hash. That's usually a really good indicator. And when I do that, it says you are root. And if you were playing along, there's the third key. And when you take a look at that, I'm not typing that in, I'm going to screw it up. Tab doesn't work either. I don't have tab. No, I don't have tab. So if you're playing the capture the flag, that's what I was trying to say earlier. If you're playing the capture the flag game, that would have been one of the keys as well that you would enter into the game management console, and depending on how quickly you caught it, you would get a certain amount of points for that information. Any questions? Does that make sense? What this does is the way that you can actually execute something in the interactive mode. And what I'm telling you to execute is the shell, just a simple shell. In Nmap, there's a number of commands that you can execute in the interactive interface for the Nmap command, which isn't always available, but sometimes it is. Also, which is rarely available, is this SUID bit set. So one of the commands that is available is the bang. And with the bang, you can run a shell and then give it something to do. So I said, run a shell, but actually run a shell. And because it has the SUID bit set, I become root at that point. It doesn't work all the time, so you try stuff, and you try stuff. Great question. Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, does that answer your question, Bruno? Okay. Any other questions? All right. That's it for me. There is a competency for this. Unlike what we saw with the BT risk attack, you still are going to use this payload, but you're not going to upload it. You're actually going to log into the admin panel and modify one of the templates. You do this by going to the dashboard. I'm still logged in, awesome. Going to the appearance so that you can modify a file. All right, we want the editor. You can hover over appearance and select editor, or you can just select appearance and then select editor. I don't care. And it takes you into the editor for all of these different pages. One of the pages that gets loaded the least often is the 404 template. And we can easily modify that with our modified payload. And really the only modification is the IP address path back to our Kali machine. How did we get this information? Well, when we discovered that there was a weak login on the WordPress login page, we exploited that by running Hydra. Because it had a different error message for wrong username versus wrong password, we could exploit that by iterating through a dictionary of first usernames, and then once we found a successful username, we could then use that username to iterate through that dictionary again and see if we could find a password. That's what we did. More often than not, because as Kiki was mentioning, a lot of these systems are very good at blocking passwords that are common in dictionaries, for example. It is helpful to come up with your own dictionary, and that's what this robots gives us. We have a dictionary file, and the fact that they don't want the world to see it is because they embed the link to that dictionary file in the robots.txt file. Now, the dictionary file being downloadable is the one contrived part in this attack, but it doesn't invalidate everything else. You have to create your own dictionary, and to be honest, the final exam of the pen testing course that I do with the information security students, I expect them to come up with their own dictionary based on clues that they find on the website. So this is very real world, coming up with a dictionary. When you discover certain vulnerabilities and you want to try and exploit those and you need to come up with a dictionary, you need to come up with a dictionary. You can use some of the canned ones, but you're more likely to do your own research, your own open source intel gathering, LinkedIn, Facebook friends, contact us pages. Like, I mean, the college used for the longest time, they used to have, and maybe they still do. I don't know.